discussions underway for the legalization of recreational marijuana, what is your opinion on such legalization? And if the EU had to intervene to stop us from legalizing recreational marijuana after it was passed in the Maltese Parliament, how would you act? Keeping in mind Malta would be the first EU country to legalize recreational marijuana use.
Basically, this is addressing a taboo which has been with us for quite a stretch of time. To start off with the first part of this interrogative, I say I am not against. The reasons are basically two. In the first place, given that the use of marijuana has been with us for such a long time, it makes no sense in continuing to prohibit, with the consequence being that pushers thrive and flourish at the expense of the young and vulnerable. Secondly, it can act as a safety valve. If I had to choose between two evils, I would choose the lesser evil. If the use of marijuana is made legal for recreation use, or as is known as continental for personal use, then its price on the market will drastically fall, and those that might think of stealing to pay for their habit will not need to do it anymore. Also, individuals that cannot resist the habit of making use of drugs might settle for marijuana, which definitely causes less damage and is totally reversible. Coming to the second part of the interrogative, I will limit myself, since this is a question of national law. If it had to be made permissible and someone tries to push a debate against Malta's stand, then I will work against and I will lobby with other fellow EU parliamentarians to beg Malta's stance. I believe that as a politician, I am to listen to what the majority within our territory uphold, and I am to deliver their voice in the European Parliament. However, since there are parts within Europe that allow the personal use of marijuana, I can never envisage such an issue to occur.
What is your view on European federalism and the opinion that there should be a United States of Europe?
To begin with, Europe has been in a state of federalism since 1952, when actually there was the federalism of steel and coal. What we actually have to talk about or distinguish about is the type of EU federalism and the actual model of a federal state as we know it. We've got federal states such as Germany, such as Mexico, such as the United States. These are known to be as closed federalism. And the difference would be in the sense that a closed federalism is that one state appears for everything. The state appears to negotiate so outside and within its borders. In the case of the EU, we have a state of an open federalism, an open federation, which means that you've got a set of 27 nation states, because unfortunately nowadays we can't say 28, given that there's the Brexit issue. We've got 27 states that work together and independently. They work together when it comes to agriculture, commerce in general. It is where the EU acts as a federal state, one state dealing vis-à-vis the others. But then it works individually, 27 nation states, when it comes to internal legislations, say national insurance, say the rights of workers on their workplace, the question of housing, internal matters. There, each state acts on its own. So it is not acting in a federal ambience any longer. So basically, this is the issue that comes by. In the EU model, which is still innovative and still in its formative days, we have a state where 27 nation states act totally independent when it comes to their internal issues. However, as one bloc when it comes, say, to on the trade issue. And that is where it differs. The question at issue is when it comes to taxation. Taxation is still something that is nationally regulated and therefore does not fall within the federal criteria. Hence, we can speak of a federal Europe, we can speak of a not federal Europe, at the same time we can speak of the independence of nation states. And that means a closer set of states working together.
Do you think the EU should become an even closer union, or to revert back to its roots on being a united community of sovereign nation states?
The idea of bringing Europe ever more closer has been a point of hot debate between those in favor and against ever since the inception of the EU. With Europe's new concept of federalism, we have adopted ourselves to a diverse continent with nations having proud histories, a more advanced governance technology which puts us ahead of other federations, for we can choose to act as one big country on the world stage, the world's largest economy, or we can choose to act independently as a single 27 states, as has been already pointed out. Hence, once we are afforded this flexibility, it is no longer a question of becoming ever closer or reverting back to a united community of sovereign nations. For thanks to our new developed open federal system, which is still evolving and being experimented with, we have both at the same time.
What is your view on political correctness? Do you think it serves as a constraint to free speech, or does it protect minorities against discrimination and marginalization?
I see this question brings up more than one issue. Political correctness is one aspect. Free speech may refer to the public in general or to a parliamentary privilege. Whatever applies to, there must always be a set of norms which regulate the same. I do not agree with anyone who just splashes mud hoping that some of it might find its place. I say this with responsibility. For 19 years, I have been elected to the House of Representatives, and I have always spoken my mind. Having said that, I never alleged anything against anyone, which was not backed by proof to substantiate what I was saying. As to political correctness, yes, I am all out in favor. Once again, I refer to my past experience in Parliament, and I always made it a point to act within my remit, as I already pointed out. When mud was hurled in my direction, I rebutted same with words and also written proof, because you have to prove what you are saying. I can say that no one ever pointed his finger and substantiated anything irregular in my personal regard. Finally, free speech is one of the basic pillars of democracy. If there is no free speech, there is no democracy. This is why free speech is enshrined in our constitution, for we are a democratic country.
Why European politics, not local?
I have been elected to the Maltese House of Representatives for 19 consecutive years. It was a wonderful experience. I think the time has come to dedicate my time and life experience, both politically and legally, on a wider spectrum, which definitely is the European Parliament. Today, more than ever, Malta needs people with expertise, especially legal and politically, to represent it in an institution where directly its decisions are to impinge on our lives, our business, and our future. I humbly believe I possess these requisites, and I am ready to be of a service this time round at the European level, once I have satisfied my competence at the national level.
With a no-deal Brexit possibility, in your opinion, what should be the EU's stand with regards to the UK?
There are two aspects to this question. The first one addresses our interests. We are not to forget our ties to the UK, and we still form part of the Commonwealth, which is headed by the Queen herself. This is an issue which the EU has to take into consideration. Like us, there are other states, such as Cyprus. Our links to the UK are deeply embedded, as was rightly emphasized by our Prime Minister, when addressing the issue in a meeting which I had the privilege to attend and which was held between our Prime Minister and the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, sometime before 2017. Going back to the other aspect, that is the EU, even if one had to put aside Malta's position, it is not in the EU's interest to isolate Britain. Britain holds a dominant position in world politics, and I cannot see Britain out. Also, Britain is the base of many products and services which are of essence to Europe. Hence, it is definite that even if there is a no-deal Brexit at the end of the day, there will be a united effort to address any problem that might arise as smoothly as possible.
As one may have come to realize, the country has been faced with the issue of ever-increasing rental prices, whilst wages remain quite unaltered. Will this issue, if you are elected, be voiced? Are you willing to push for the EU to regulate rental prices?
Since we are a democratic republic and since we are members of the EU, then I cannot envisage any sort of freezing rents nor even touching them. Going back in history, one can never expect the present government to do miracles at the flick of a finger. The previous administrations did nothing for 25 years wage-wise. I can still remember myself criticizing the government in Parliament on the basis that since 1997, wages have hardly increased by one Maltese lira. It is not possible for the government to shoot up the minimum wage. What the government can do is create the opportunities for our people to get better jobs. This is the difference between the government leading our country from other neighboring governments. Whilst our government is being innovative and attracting futuristic investments such as blockchain, cryptocurrencies, medical cannabis, six-star accommodations, amongst others, other investments, together with good study facilities and incentives to students, other governments within the EU are actually dreaming of starting to implement. Also, reference is made to the various schemes available where one can buy a property, having the monthly rate subsidized, thus becoming the owner at the end of the day instead of paying rent. With these kind of policies and politics, Malta's government is addressing the problem without going against any constitutional disposition pertaining to rights of individuals with regard to property, nor against the EU's principle of free market.
What is your view on the new copyright laws found in Article 13?
Article 13 of Chapter 415 is a generic article aimed at protecting the works of artists from unscrupulous people who pirate works of art to the detriment of those who with such sacrifice produce them, and is set to be welcomed by many musicians who claim the reforms are needed to fairly compensate their works. The directive comprises of a host of legislation aimed at upgrading copyright law for digital age. Article 13 forces social media platforms such as Facebook, Google, and YouTube to have responsibility over unlicensed user-uploaded copyrighted material. Under the new legislation, such platforms must take proactive steps to prevent users from sharing unlicensed copyrighted material and to detect videos and content that are copyrighted infringed before they are available. The legislation will require content publishing sites to automatically filter copyrighted material, including images, songs, and videos uploaded onto their platforms, unless the content has been specifically licensed. This could be good news for those who hold rights to the copy, such as record labels, authors, and artists, but it could also bring unexpected consequences for small content creators too. As well as the watering down of user-generated creativity across the internet, other concerns about Article 13 are focused on the possibility of filters possibly accidentally blocking non-copyrighted materials as well. There is also the worry that smaller websites will not be able to afford expensive filter software, the likes of Google and Facebook, and will therefore run the risk of failing to تلفت الفوق. As well as okay, we go. As well as the watering down of user-generated creativity across the internet, other concerns about Article 13 are focused on the possibility of filters possibly accidentally blocking non-copyrighted materials. There is also the worry that smaller websites will not be able to afford expensive filter software, the likes of Google and Facebook, and will therefore run the risk of failing to be Article 13 compliant.
What do you think can be done about the huge overpopulation problem that the world is facing right now?
Overpopulation is brought about by peace itself and the advancement in medicine. Those are two basic phenomena that brings overpopulation. This leads to a direct question. How are these people going to be fed? It is a known secret that the world will be facing two severe problems, that of water shortage and the other of food. The problem of water is already being addressed thanks to desalination plants, which guarantee continuous water supply. The other issue of food is more acute. From studies available, fish colonies are in a decline, and by 2030, unless the catches are regulated, the possibility is that a lot of what we call fish will become extinct. The same with a lot of wild animals which are hunted either for food or capriciously. Hence, the modern terminology of protein. Whether it is the tilling of fields, rearing of animals, or the rearing of fish in aquacultural plants, the term is being coined as protein, food. In this regard, I have been advocating locally and will continue to do, if elected to the European Parliament, to start investing in aquaculture. The EU has already started to do this through the introduction of the blue growth concept, the blue marine. We need to start multiplying fish. The EU has to ascertain that the production of food is sustainable and that it can sustain the rest of the world. Without food and water, there will never be peace.
What is your view with regard to illegal immigration to Europe? Should there be stronger integration initiatives in every EU member state?
Europe has opted for the assimilation integration of migrants. Yet not all member states are applying the solidarity principle, with the end result being that some member states are assuming their responsibility while others are not. The principle of solidarity and fair sharing of responsibility is crucial among all member states to improve this situation. At the moment, Malta is accepting migrants. People from overseas are employed because we cannot find workers to do this job. We have work opportunities for them, and as I stated elsewhere, in our case, the EU is to help Malta financially so that migrants are taught our language and our culture. Having said that, Malta should not sit back and accept being lumped by whoever decides to land on our shores, as used to be the case. We do not want to stop all immigration, we want to limit the numbers. Once we are members of the EU, and given that there are agreements which set how this problem is to be addressed, each member state is to abide by its said agreements and uphold its responsibility. This is a common challenge for the European Union as a whole. Offering protection to those in need and sustaining other member states in implementing a fair migration is the duty of all members.
What is your view of Eurosceptic parties, mostly far-right and far-left, who openly preach against the EU and its values in the European Parliament gatherings?
In my opinion, Eurosceptics are similar to atheists. They declare themselves as non-believers when actually they believe in not believing. The same thing goes on with Eurosceptics. You either believe and want to be a club member or else you have to leave. However, there is also good in their existence. The fact that they criticize the EU might lead to good in itself. Hence, we know that Eurosceptics thrive on the situation of immigration, lack of work, lack of education, poverty, climate change, amongst other issues. Hence, it is to be my work within the European institutions to have the voice of the people heard. In Malta, we are not that much affected by these issues, but still, we have to continue to improve.
How will you approach the public transport issue in order to engage more people to use the system more frequently and ensure that it is being more efficient for its users?
This is one of the portfolios for which I was a main spokesperson when in Parliament. I used to criticize the then nationalist government for the disaster in our streets and for the disaster it had brought into our system. If we had something that functioned in Malta was the public transport. It was not efficient, but it had a based structure where all buses departed from Valletta. That meant that I will catch 2 buses wherever I want to go. As the system was then introduced, you had to catch multiple buses to get to the same destination. Other destinations were completely left out without a service. Changing government and the system has improved, though admittedly not to the public's full satisfaction. What I was proposing was that we are to introduce a mini underground. A full-fledged underground is not viable, for we do not envisage a 1 million commuters per year. This would mean a change in terminal. The main terminal would be housed between the university and Mater Dei. The reason being, circa 25,000 people visit these 2 places per day. This means that the possibility of the people not using their car would be to that extent. To assure use of the system, underground car parks are to be constructed near the underground outlets and circular public services operated around the various districts to create localities to and from the outlets. In order to further render circulation to our roads, I was proposing the construction of an underwater tunnel on the northeastern side of the island so that we bring about a clear circular flow in traffic. However, all this will have to be studied in further detail. Obviously, in order to have a system, a public system that people look up to, definitely there must be this sense of time from one destination to the other.
What is your main goal as a candidate? And what would you wish to work towards should you be elected?
My priority is to ensure my country's interests are safeguarded at all times and that all Maltese citizens have the same rights as those in other EU countries. I confirm my intention to defend Malta, especially from all the false attacks on our financial jurisdiction. I intend to safeguard our environment, especially from air and sea pollution, cleaner and more sustainable transportation, addressing the global food crisis by feeding a growing global population, and yet still preserving the environment through innovative farming and blue growth strategy, including developing sectors with high potential such as aquaculture, marine biotechnology, ocean energy. My commitment will be towards the prosperity of my country, its people, and future generations. I intend to be the people's voice in the European Parliament.